It's almost playoffs, and the Maple Leafs forward group is essentially set with the exception of one player, a kid coming from the NCAA, the Minnesota Golden Gophers, Matthew Knies. And it's time that we ask ourselves, is Matthew Knies overrated? What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. If you have not already hit that subscribe button on this channel, please make sure to do so. Hit subscribe to this channel. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers before the playoffs as well. Drop a like on this video, and throughout the course of this video, you can let me know your comments, your thoughts on anything that I bring up, as well as questions. We'll try to get to some of those, and you will see here, we did launch our channel membership, so throughout the video, you will see across the bottom of the screen us thanking those channel members. So thank you to everyone who's added on and become a channel member of the Leafs Digest YouTube channel. If you'd like to do so, you can find that on the screen there beside our logo, or you can find that on the main page for the Leafs Digest. But let's get into today's topic, and it's just one simple question. It's something that I saw that was brought up the other day. It's being discussed by media members around the NHL, and most importantly, it's a topic and a discussion that's being brought up around the NHL and fans of other teams who are being tired of hearing about the hype around Matthew Knies. Now, the one thing that I kept seeing around fans was they were just a little bit disappointed, maybe a little frustrated that Leafs fans were sitting here with this player that's being so hyped up, whether it be in trade discussions or a player that could come here and add value to this team, especially come playoff time. But it wasn't until I heard Ray Ferraro the other day discussing Matthew Knies and him making the leap from NCAA to the NHL. And Ray was talking on Overdrive on TSN 1050, and he was discussing this. And this was a very specific quote that he had that I thought was very interesting. He said that Matthew Knies, the comparison of jumping from the NCAA to the NHL, as specifically at this time of the year, as you're ramping up to get into the playoffs, and then once you get into the playoffs, he compared it to this. He said, you get your license at 18 years old for the first time, and you pull onto the highway, and it feels like everyone around you is driving 140 miles per hour. He just essentially was saying this is an enormous step from the NCAA to the NHL. He wasn't saying that Matthew Knies can't make the leap, but he was kind of cautioning people to sit there and say, pump the brakes a little bit, because we can't just expect this guy to jump to the league and make an immediate impact as soon as he gets there. Now, I started looking into this, and I started thinking and seeing online people saying he's overrated. Stop talking about him like this. He's an overrated player. So I did a little research, as you can imagine, and pulled up what is the definition of overrated. Well, overrated, when you go to Google and you type in definition of overrated, it pops up and says rated or valued too highly, specifically an overrated player. So, is Matthew Knies rated or valued too highly? Well, here's what I would have to say to that. We won't know until he plays in the NHL, until he gets his career going and starts to establish himself. So in order to sit here and say he's overrated, I think would be a leap. But here is what I will say in regards to the overrated conversation. Matthew Knies, from Leafs fans at least, and media members surrounding the Leafs, is generating a significant amount of buzz. This is guys being talked about like he is the next Jack Eichel or Johnny Gaudreau, who's going to jump from the NCAA, even Cale Makar, and make an immediate impact on their NHL program to the point of being some type of difference maker that could put their team over the edge. Now, we know that Kyle Dubas left open some cap space specifically for Matthew Knies to be able to join here. That's one of the reasons it seems like he made moves to trade out a guy like Pierre Engvall and bring back Lafferty, because you essentially swap very similar players and take on $1 million less of salary. Bringing back Lafferty opens up that space for Matthew Knies to join your roster. But one thing here to remember as well, he still hasn't signed with the Leafs. He would have to sign with them at the end of this season, and now all signs point to that he would. There's rumors that the Leafs tried to get Austin Matthews to court Knies to join the team. We've seen him speak publicly in the media about Matthew Knies and about his ability to potentially hop onto this Leafs team as it rolls into the playoffs, the impact that he could be able to make. But even Matthews himself cautioned people to an extent, saying, it's a big leap. You got to get ready for it. He's a big boy, essentially. He could be ready to go as soon as he gets here, but we don't know yet. So in terms of the overrated conversation, he might be. he might be overrated, but I don't think that we're in a position right now to sit here and distinguish whether he is or is not an overrated player. I don't know that we're there yet. As far as his skill set, it kind of seems like everyone is on the same page. He's a big player coming in at 6'3", 209 pounds. He's essentially the same size as Austin Matthews. He's a left-handed left winger, 20 years old. Like, this guy is a young guy ready to go and make the leap. He plays a physical brand of hockey with Minnesota in the NCAA. He is a guy who can score at a good rate. He can create offense, create space for himself. His skating isn't quite there. It's not like he's an incredible skater, but he can create space, especially using that size to his advantage. And now jumping to the NHL, when guys are flying at a much higher pace, they are much faster, it is one thing to look out for if that skating isn't quite at an NHL level, which it may not be. We don't necessarily know yet. We haven't seen him skate with NHL players. But Matthew Knies this season in the NCAA had an incredible year. He had 41 points in 37 games. He's a Hobey Baker Award finalist. He won the Big Ten Player of the Year over Adam Fantilli, who will be a lottery pick this season in the NHL draft. So you're looking at a guy who put up a great year, a very dominant year nonetheless. Just the way that he played, the way that he commands the ice, and the way that he can take over shifts. Now, one thing that I think is important there is that he is a guy who can take over shifts. The Leafs are looking for players who can be impact players, not just a guy on a line. They're looking for someone who can step in and take over. But with the comments, especially from a guy like Ray Ferraro, who is very knowledgeable, a well-respected media member amongst the NHL community, it's a big leap. And he essentially cautioned people and said, I'd be very surprised if he makes a meaningful impact right away. So he's not saying he can't, but he's saying he'd be surprised if he did. One thing I want to remind people, especially as we look at this and say he could play in the top 6, he could jump in there. If he does play in the top 6, guess what that means? He's going to be playing against some of the toughest matchups in the NHL because they're going to put out their best defenders, their best defensive forward lines against Austin Matthews, because you can't let Austin Matthews get away cleanly by putting out a lower tier defensive group against him on the ice, because you look and say, oh, Matthew Knies is out there with him, Yarncroke's out there with him, we can wean off a little bit. No, it doesn't work like that. That's not the reality of the situation. When it comes to Matthew Knies and stepping into this lineup, he's going to face tougher competition than he does 18 through 20-year-olds in college hockey, 21-year-olds as well. So it is going to be a little bit of a leap. The other thing here, the other day, Canisius falls to Minnesota and Matthew Knies 9-2 in the first game of the NCAA tournament. Matthew Knies has 0 points in that game. Now, he did create a bunch of opportunities. We saw him doing Matthew Knies things, hitting guys, creating chances in the slot, dipsy-doodling around guys, getting shots off, but he still managed to come away with no points, and that is a playoff game in the NCAA. I'm not using that as a knock on him by any means. It happens, and your team still finds a way to win the game, which is the most important thing here above all else. But the other thing that I want to remind people is, over the last little while, college players haven't necessarily translated immediately to the NHL game. Now, there are a few guys, and I went through a list dating back to 2010 of the most recent Hobey Baker winners, as Matthew Knies is a nominee or a finalist for the Hobey Baker Award. And taking a look at this list, it was very interesting. So here are some Hobey Baker winners from the past few seasons back to 2010. Some of these names, they're going to pop off the page. Some of them, you're going to sit there and wonder, who is that guy? So, look, Dryden McKay, he's a Leafs player. He's signed by the Maple Leafs. Cole Caulfield, very well-known player who's a very dominant player with the Montreal Canadiens. Scott Perunovich, not really a known guy around the NHL. Cale Makar, obviously one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman in the NHL right now, and could potentially go down as one of the best defensemen in history. Now you go down Adam Gaudette. This is a guy that was on the Leafs roster this year. Didn't make much of an impact, couldn't get into the lineup. Will Butcher, not the greatest NHL player, to say the least. He's an NHL player, but not a guy who's making a huge impact here. Jimmy Vesey, we all know how that turned out. Jack Eichel, obviously dominant. Johnny Gaudreau, dominant. But then you look down below them, Drew LeBlanc, Jack Connolly, Andy Miel, Blake Jeffron. These are guys that you kind of sit there and say, I don't know who some of those guys are, and it never really panned out. So even if you are the most dominant college hockey player in your year, it might not mean that you can be a guy who can take a step forward. Now, we are seeing a little bit of a trend here over the last little while where some of these guys who are Hobey Baker finalists or Hobey Baker winners are guys who can step in and make an impact. But I also want to caution some of this. Johnny Gaudreau, when he joined into the NHL, yes, he was a smaller player, but took him a little bit of a time to adapt. Jack Eichel joined into a team that wasn't that great when he jumped onto them in the Buffalo Sabres, and he could kind of slow his way into things. It wasn't a fast-moving train in Buffalo where you said, you got to get in here, you got to get and be an impact player right away and help us win playoff rounds. That wasn't the case for him. Now, I mean, Cole Caulfield jumped in. He had some success with Montreal, but looking at him the next season, he got sent down to the AHL because he wasn't performing the way that you would like him to. So he goes down to the AHL and has to spend some time there before he can jump back up. So some of these guys who did win the Hobey Baker, I mean, it has worked out for them. Cale Makar, immediate impact player. But outside of that, in terms of joining a playoff team, not the most immediate impact on a team once they got there. So basically what I'm trying to say with this Knies discussion, do I think he's overrated personally? No, I don't. Do I think he's garnering a ton of hype that might be a little excessive at this point in time? Yeah, I think it might be getting to that extent. We're essentially talking about him as Leafs fans here like he's the next Connor McDavid who's going to jump into the league and be able to make some crazy impact right away. I just want to caution Leafs fans around the league right now, looking at this team around the world, sitting here saying, Matthew Knies is joining this team, we're going to be fine. He might make that impact. All I'm saying is don't expect him to, because he might not. He might start on the first line and it doesn't work out. He might go down to the second, it doesn't work out, and then maybe he slots in on the third line. Maybe he ends up being a guy that they can't really find a spot for him on a consistent basis come the playoffs. He might be a guy who's a reliable player next season, but right now on a moving train, no training camp, no preseason games, you don't get that time to adjust to the team. It might not be the easiest transition for him. That's all I'm trying to say here with Matthew Knies. Look, this guy, it looks like his team is going to go on a run in the NCAA tournament. He's one of the top impact players on that Minnesota Golden Gophers team. I expect them to continue to have success here and go far in this tournament. But ultimately, you know what else that means? It means he joins the Leafs a whole lot later. So that's one thing that I kind of look at here and just say, okay, let's put a little bit of a pause. He might not have that much time to adjust to the NHL level, and he might not be able to jump in here right away and just make some crazy impact on this team. So is he overrated? I don't think so. But look back at some of these dominant college hockey players dating back to 2010. Some of them, it just never really translated for them. Some of them are good NHL players, but they're not dominant. And some of them are dominant, but it took them a little while to get to that dominant point in their careers. So pump the brakes a little bit here on Matthew Knies. I just don't want people sitting here thinking this guy is our savior. He's going to carry us through round one, because guess who he's going to have to go up against in a 7-game series as soon as he gets here? The Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that's gone to 3 consecutive Stanley Cups. They won 2 of the last 3 here. This team is going to be prepared. They know how to play playoff hockey, and they're going to be a tough team to beat. It might not be that easy for him to step in here and dominate right away. I hope I'm proven wrong. I don't think he's overrated. Want to clarify that. I think that he is what we think he is as Leafs fans, but I don't think that in the first couple of games that he comes here, we might see that right away from his college hockey experience jumping into the NHL. I think it might take a little bit of time to get there. So that's essentially all I'm trying to say. He might be that player eventually, but it might not be in the first few games of the first playoff series that he plays in. I don't think it's time to call him overrated. We'll have to see that throughout the course of his first couple of seasons, maybe his first, the beginning of his career here. But right now, I think Leafs fans at least kind of look at this guy. We know what he is. We know what he's supposed to be. I just don't know how much that is going to translate right to the NHL as soon as he gets here. So Leafs fans, thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. If you enjoyed the content, please make sure to like this video. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. And as you saw there, we do have channel memberships now. So if you want to join and be a channel member, please make sure to check that out. You can find it on the homepage. You should be able to find it on the page here while you're watching this video to join as a channel member. But thank you to everyone who already has. And most importantly here, let me know in the comments below your thoughts on Matthew Knies, if you think he can make an impact right away, if you think he'll sign with the Leafs at the end of his season, and how you think that transition will go for him. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed the content, and most importantly, keep believing.